Have you ever opened your inbox and found an email that immediately spikes your blood pressure and you know it's a customer complaint and that you're gonna have to do something with it? If you haven't, you will one day. So stay here. I'm Melissa Franks. I am your host of the Opt-In podcast. And this is where we go from surviving to thriving in business. Today, we are talking all about customer complaints and what you should and should not do when you receive one. If you are in business for yourself, if you are working inside of somebody else's business and you're selling things to people at large, or businesses for that matter, at some point, somebody is going to be unhappy with the service or the goods or whatever you are providing to them. And they're going to make it known. They are absolutely going to let you know. And then you have the responsibility to respond. And so we're going to talk today about the gift that a customer complaint is, first and foremost, and then how to navigate those waters as you are developing the skill to do so elegantly and with grace for the long term. I think that customer complaints are really, really helpful because they help you improve your business, help you improve your communication, your marketing, maybe even the overall quality of what you're providing out there to the world for them to buy. And at the very basic level, all that a complaint is feedback. So the first thing that I invite you to do is stop thinking about them as a complaint. Just remove the word completely and say, we have a customer that has provided us some feedback. And sometimes you're going to get feedback from customers that's amazing. We call those testimonials, sometimes, or reviews. You're going to get information from customers that you want to put on your website, you want to share on social media, you want to go home at the end of the day and tell your loved ones about the amazing thing that a customer said to you. And then sometimes the feedback that you receive is critical. Sometimes the feedback you receive is constructive. And I'm not going to sugarcoat things here because that's not what I do. Sometimes the feedback you receive is just downright mean. And so, like anybody, you're going to need to develop a little bit of a tougher skin and take feedback for what it is. Just input. It's just information. It's just somebody's opinion about what you are or aren't doing. The fact of the matter is, if they're taking the time to communicate to you a problem, then you absolutely owe it to them in kind to respond intelligently and with empathy and certainty for what your position is relative to their feedback. The second reason why getting this sort of feedback from a customer is so important is because it is much more difficult to acquire a new customer than to retain an unhappy one. Think about that for a minute. Think about all of the effort and expense that you have to go through in order to get a new customer in the door and to make a purchase. Counteract that with the one that you already have in that's just not super happy. It takes significantly less effort to right the ship there and keep them long term than it does to replace them with somebody new. And then lastly, the reason why complaints are so important is because this is a pillar of your brand. It is a pillar of the customer experience. Customer experience isn't just the good stuff. It's not just the sales funnel. It's not just the marketing communication. It's not just the nurture sequence. Customer experience isn't just fulfillment. Customer experience is how they and their journey with your business, with your brand, inclusive of the bad parts. So it will impact your brand either positively or negatively, depending on what you do. When you respond to customer complaints, will you be known as the Nordstrom's that takes all the returns and they don't ask any questions? Costco's the same way. Or are you going to be known as the Walmart that if you are 2 minutes late for that 30-day return policy, you're stuck with whatever it is in that bag you have? You're going to be known for how you behave when a customer is unhappy. And you want to ensure that what they're telling the world is what you want your brand to reflect. So when we talk about receiving negative feedback or a customer complaint, often they just do. And that's because just like learning how to interview potential employees or contractors for jobs, or selecting third-party providers like an advertising agency for your business is a skill that you have to acquire and learn. So is responding to feedback from customers. It's a skill. It's something that you need to learn and then test, and then you need to actually get feedback generally from the customers about how it landed, and you continue to refine as you go. So as you are learning this skill, here's some things to watch out for. One of the mistakes that's often made is that you get defensive, that you respond emotionally, or you're trying to justify how you showed up in the situation, and you are lacking empathy. So don't get defensive. There is a way for you to not agree with their position without you becoming emotional or blaming them. The second mistake is that you ignore the negative feedback, or you just really significantly delayed the response. Whether the email from the customer is one seeking help or providing a glowing review or delivering you some criticism for breakfast, your response time should be the same across the board. Your customer should know that whatever they communicate to you, it gets returned within the same service level. If you say you respond to emails in 24 hours, the complaint gets a 24-hour turnaround time, just like the compliment. And another mistake, and this is a big one, is over apologizing or overcompensating. I get it. You do not want a bad review out there in the marketplace. You're concerned it will negatively impact your brand, that it will impact sales, that it could kill your company. I get it. I know you're worried about being canceled on social media. I get it. And I too don't want my brand to go through an experience like that. At the same time, you're the owner. And at the same time, part of your responsibility is to be clear and committed to the quality of the services and products that you deliver. You need to be clear about your policies and your terms and conditions, and you also have to know what you will and won't do. And so what that means is that sometimes you respond within the appropriate time frame and you stay neutral. Don't over apologize. Don't start with an I'm sorry. Do not accept blame when you do not feel like it is warranted or should be placed. And absolutely don't start offering things to bribe them and get them to stay or quiet them down or make them happy, because you just lose in the long run. Because it comes with the next mistake that is often made, is its inconsistency in responding to negative feedback. When you are over apologizing and when you are overcompensating, then you also become relatively inconsistent. And so one person may make a complaint and you may completely refund them, and then the next person may make a complaint and you say, suck it up, buttercup. This is our policy. Stick with the program. Eventually, those inconsistencies in how you operate in your business will become public knowledge. And that inconsistency is actually going to damage your brand. If you were consistently saying no refunds and you're not giving anybody a refund, then you're just known as the no refund brand. You made that decision, you stuck in place, and you stood your ground. If you're the no refund brand and sometimes you give them and sometimes you don't, you're confusing your customers. You're confusing your potential customers. And it has everybody kind of wondering, if they give refunds sometimes, then maybe there is a problem, right? Squeaky wheel gets the grease, if you know what I mean. And then the last mistake that is often made, and this usually happens, quite frankly, in a brick and mortar or on social media, it's publicly arguing with your customers. Never, ever, if a complaint is happening to you live, literally in the physical location for where you do business, should you engage in an escalated conversation. Your goal always is to diffuse the situation and get it to a conclusion. It is to do so with empathy, not emotion. And so whether you are in the comments on social media or you're standing in front of somebody in your physical location, when you are receiving criticism, it's best to say nothing at all. It's best to just receive it and then communicate what the next step is. It's never a good idea to get into a debate, a tit for tat, and argue back and forth. That will lead to negative consequences down the line, which could actually bankrupt your business. So if all of those things are mistakes, then I'm sure you're wondering, what you're supposed to do. Melissa, you're telling me not to get defensive and that I need to respond to them and that I shouldn't be overcompensating and be careful with the apologies. And you're telling me not to argue. So like, what can I do? What can I do? Like often these pieces of feedback or these pieces of criticism are just not true, or I don't agree with them, or they're misguided, or they're partially sourced in truth, right? Is that kind of what you're thinking? I get it. It's confusing at this juncture about what you're supposed to do. The good news is I'm going to tell you what to do instead. So instead of getting defensive, you are going to acknowledge and empathize. Sit with that for a minute. You're not going to be defensive. You're going to acknowledge and empathize. What you're going to say very easily is, I get it. I too want XYZ, whatever they want. That's important to me too. And I hear you when you say that you're disappointed in what you've received or it didn't match your expectations. You're not going to tell them that they're right. But what you are going to do is get yourself on the other side of the table by saying, like, I understand. Your priority is my priority too. I too want to invest in quality products. I too want to know that when I make a purchase like this, I'm going to get value out of it. I too want to be able to buy that workout plan and see results in 30 days. I get it. It's important to get that delivery. But what you're not going to say is, I'm so sorry that you didn't get that. I'm so sorry that it wasn't the right training for you. I'm so sorry. You're not going to say those things. And you're definitely not going to say, well, if you had done what you were supposed to do, you would have had the result. You're not going to say that either. What you're going to do is you're going to find a point of agreement. It doesn't need to be that you agree with the feedback, but you're going to find a point of agreement about the priorities, and then you're going to move the conversation forward. The next thing that you're going to do, and you do this before you respond, you're going to gather the facts. You're going to gather them. Figure out who this person is. Figure out what they bought. Figure out their buying history. Figure out where they came from. If you're an online business owner, figure out what lead magnet or sales email sparked the conversion. Connect the dots and figure out what their journey has been with your business. And then compare that to the feedback that they're giving you and say, where could things have gotten lost? Where could things have gotten misconstrued? Where could things have fallen off the apple cart? Recently, I was working with a client who had a customer that was feeling like what they purchased isn't what they received. Upon some further digging about when they made the purchase and what their experience was, so what website they had to go to and then what they had to do next, it became very clear to us that it was communicated what they were purchasing. What they purchased is what they received, and there was an opportunity for it to be more specific and clear. And so once we had the facts gathered, we knew that what they were asking for in this instance wasn't something that we were willing to provide. So we communicated empathetically and we had the facts and then held our ground. We also recognize that the criticism was just feedback. And so we went back in and made sure that things were more clear than they had been before. We made sure that we moved some language from the bottom to the top. We made sure that every page reiterated the same information all the way through the buying process. It wasn't because it wasn't there. The information absolutely was there, and there was not any misrepresentations. In fact, it was in black and white in multiple places. We did acknowledge that if one person missed it, somebody else could, and so we made it glaringly obvious. When you gather the facts, then you can respond. You can make an informed decision about what you will or you won't be able to do for the customer, and you will see if there's an opportunity for you to change anything in your process or your communication or your business to avoid having the miscommunication or the misunderstanding or the gap in fulfillment in the future. When you create that response, so remember we said we're not going to ignore or delay the response. When you create the response, it's going to be timely. You're going to do it in a prompt fashion, and you are going to be professional. I want you to understand one thing clearly from me right now. When you are communicating with an unhappy customer, time matters more than perfection. You cannot spend 24 or 48 hours refining your message, throwing it through AI, then sending it to your team, then tweaking words, then having your lawyer look at it, and all of a sudden it's 7 days and you still haven't responded. You can't. You cannot. What you can do is you can write the message that you believe is the best possible message that you can craft, that is brief and professional, and you can send it in a timely manner. The longer it takes for you to respond to negative feedback, the more emotional the other party will get. They will feel forgotten and secondary and unheard. And that creates additional negative emotions that you can't predict. So stop the train in its tracks. Respond promptly, respond professionally. Do so with empathy and facts. Facts neutralize everything in an instant. So make sure that you do it in a timely fashion. And another thing that you need to make sure of is that you have a clear process. So if you are not the one responding, then you need to train your team on how to handle negative feedback, what the steps are. You may need to create the actual language for a variety of scenarios that they can put into email communication. You may need to give them scripts if you have a customer service call center where people are calling in to have their issues resolved. You need to train your people, and then you need to monitor it. You need to go back and look at emails that were sent previously and make sure they're aligned and they're handling the situation as you would expect. You need to make sure that there is an escalation process. So at a certain point, if it becomes too much, they go to the next level of management or to you if there isn't one. Initially, you're going to handle all of the client feedback. You're going to handle it all, the good and the bad. And then you're going to delegate that activity, because that's one of the things I recommend you delegate first. And that's where you need to ensure that they are acting in your likeness, that they are responding and caring for your clients as you would expect them to and as you would do yourself. And you need to decide on a resolution philosophy. You need to decide on, when a negative piece of feedback comes through, what the goal and resolution is. Are you trying to retain the customer? Are you focused on adhering to the black and white policy or terms and conditions that are out there? Are you trying to flip the script and have them go from being critical to a raving fan? Are you trying to be fair across all of the customers and all of the pieces of feedback do you get? Is your goal that they walk away feeling like the resolution was equitable? Maybe it wasn't everything that they asked for, but they're happy with the outcome. What is your goal in those interactions? And everybody should be really clear on that. They should be also really, really clear about the boundaries and how much they can and can't do. The Ritz-Carlton, we've talked about them before, they're famous for having a policy where everybody on staff, everybody, has $2,000 to spend, no questions asked, to resolve a customer complaint. A waitress overhears a couple complaining that their toilet ran all night in their bathroom and they couldn't get any sleep. She can call a plumber and get them in and fix their toilet by the time breakfast is over. No questions asked. The Ritz-Carlton has a very clear philosophy on how to manage critical feedback and the goal and resolution. Now, I'm not advocating that your small business be the Ritz-Carlton. What I am communicating is that you need to follow in their footsteps and ensure that anybody that's responding to customer complaints understands what the goal is, what the boundaries are, what they can and can't do, and then follow through with that consistently. And what you should also do is document and track complaints. You should keep a log of negative feedback that you receive, because it's going to help you start to see some themes. It's going to help you start to understand where you need to make more holistic changes to all of your communication or your marketing or your sales process or your fulfillment or the manufacturing of your product or your supply chain or like whatever. Right? The more feedback you get, the more you see the situation holistically, and the more you can adapt your systems and process over time so that you can eliminate that feedback. It helps you see trends that you wouldn't otherwise see, because if you have 1, 2, 3, 7 people responding to customer emails, they're not sharing notes. And unless the complaint is really, really extreme, you're not going to see it at your desk level either. So creating a log, having somebody go through that and identify themes on a regular basis, and then do continuous improvements to eliminate the trigger for that negative feedback is really, really important to having sustainable long-term growth in your business with solid brand integrity. Now, what we haven't really talked about are those emails, those phone calls, those voice memos, those DMs that are just red flags. Because the reality is that not all feedback is created equally. And there are bad actors out in the world, and they will try to manipulate you. They will try to leverage gaslighting or abuse in order to get whatever they want out of the situation. And you need to understand where your bright line is around that. You need to understand what your non-negotiables are. It is rare. Yet, there will be times when you need to fire a client or a customer, and it's okay. Because just like with an employee who's underperforming and the whole team knows it, and they're waiting to see if you're going to do something about it, a client or a customer that is negative and vocal and inside of your business or service or inside of your community, it's a toxic element. It's toxic to you and your staff and your other clients or customers. And so there will become times when you just have to say, like, enough is enough, and we're going to release you from everything. We're going to refund you all of your money. We're going to remove all of your access. We're going to do whatever it is that you're going to do. You keep the products. They're yours. Here's your money back. Whatever it might be. There are times where you need to fire a customer, and that is absolutely okay. The other thing that you need to pay attention to is those people that will continue to be in your ecosystem. They might be on your email list. They might actually keep buying things from you, and yet they're constantly harassing your staff or making unreasonable demands. You need to keep an eye on those people. You need to red flag them. You need to, and eventually they may end up in the category of being fired as clients or customers. But you also must have a policy of no harassment, that we do not bend to unreasonable demands. Now, on the flip side, you can actually leverage feedback for some good. And by feedback, I mean negative feedback. On the flip side, you can actually turn it into something positive. And here's a few ways. You can work with your team to understand real life feedback and complaints and use the lists and the tracking that we talked about before to improve your processes. And you can talk publicly about, hey, we completely changed our sales process because we got a lot of feedback that people were really confused about what they were buying. So we stopped doing this and we started doing this, and that's a listen to all of us. We heard you, and now we're doing things differently. It creates stronger customer loyalty. When you're transparent about things that you could improve and did improve and what the results were, people know that they're in a relationship with you, not just a transactional one, and that you will listen and take into account their thoughts and opinions and emotions, that you will spend the time to really evaluate what's best for all of those in your ecosystem and take actions, timely actions, to make improvements which are necessary. And then sometimes handling negative feedback can actually lead to a referral. In fact, you can turn the situation around so much that you end up with a raving fan on the other side of it. And if nothing else, you get some testimonials. When you are consistent and you are empathetic, and to a certain extent you hold the line on where you will and won't bend, you foster loyalty. When people understand who your brand is, what you stand for, it makes it really easy for them to determine if this is the right place for them or not. In fact, sometimes they'll self-select out. The ones that stay, they're the ones that are loyal. They're the ones that recommend your services or your products. They're the ones shouting from the rooftops on social media that you're the go-to for whatever you do. So make sure that you're caring for those that are providing you negative feedback as well as you're caring for those that are giving you positive feedback. There is gold in both camps. You just need to approach all of it as a learning opportunity for how to improve your business going forward. So as we kind of close out today, one of the things that I want to remind you of is that how you handle the complaint is always going to be more memorable than whatever the complaint was about. Always. You also can't prevent complaints from happening. The bigger you get, the more often they will happen. The only way that you can operate in a world without any complaints is you go out of business. So be receptive to the feedback. Look at it as a learning opportunity. Try to take the emotion out of it as much as you can. I know sometimes it's impossible, especially with the ones where they're being pretty abusive and gaslighting and all the things. They'll punch you where it hurts. But it's a gift to get the feedback. And if you don't want to get complaints, you may not want to be in the entrepreneurial space for the long term. And the last thing that I'll say is that if you go out there into the industry at large, there are millions of examples of Nike's a great one, of where they have taken negative complaints or poor sales and turned it into a triumphant story of success, where they've become defining moments for the business. So latch on to those moments and pieces of feedback, because you never know what the next stage of growth they'll unlock when you address them will be. I hope that this was helpful for you. I know many of you are struggling with how to handle requests for refunds or dissatisfaction with things that are purchased. And this is just the tip of the iceberg on how to handle customer complaints, aka negative feedback. It's a good toolkit for you to start working on, for you to focus yourself and your team around. And if you follow some of the tips that we discussed today in the podcast, you're gonna start to have a roadmap for how to address it so that you're not blindsided when they come in. You actually know what steps to take. You'll have some language to use, and you'll be able to respond faster than you ever have before, because you won't have the emotional sucker punch that comes with it when it's unexpected. Until we meet next time, please know you are wise and you are strong and you are capable, and I believe in you.